Great body of work that you've done. Amazing breadth of activity that it seems the so-called Fancy Bear have. Just walk us through what you've really tried to build upon in this new report.
Thanks, Caroline. So going back to 2014, before this became the political hot rod of an issue of 2016, we were then profiling this group, which we call APT-28, and attributed their operations to the Russian government as the sponsor behind them. And what we've seen is a variety of targets, everything from journalists in Chechnya to defense attachés in Eastern Europe, to then the elections in the DNC and the World Anti-Doping Organization, the same entity that put the ban on Russian athletes, or some Russian athletes, before the 2016 Olympics. So a variety of different targets that we've seen this group go after. And they've done it in a couple ways. They'll breach the networks using malware, so software used maliciously to get into a network and take data, frequently email. And then we're also seeing another side of these operations that play out in the leaks, on WikiLeaks, on DC Leaks. This is when the troves of emails have come out that change the conversation. And it's the combination of that network intrusion and then the ability to change the narrative through that leaked data that's been so powerful in the arsenal of what APT-28's been doing, particularly in the US in 2016.
And using social media as a means to do all of this. Is there a risk that this is actually still going on? How much could the US government, indeed the German government, still be compromised?
This isn't just going on, it's the group behind this is innovating, and they're taking it to Europe next. We'll also see this continue to occur around policy issues in the US. The elections were just one of a variety of targets that this group's gone after, and when we look at the upcoming elections in the Netherlands, in France, in Germany, we're seeing the same mechanisms. Ability to get hashtags trending, ability to push certain types of documents to particular journalists, a really focused ability to change how the conversation in the press plays out that this group is particularly attuned to. And they do this very flexibly. So they don't need to go change the malware, the tools that they use. They just need to change the flavor of how they get their message out. And that's what's so powerful here and also easy to deny. So if the narrative changes, was it just a sense of what needed to be reported on, or was it actually operations? In what we've seen, there are clear intentional operations with the forensics behind it that link this back to a Russian government-sponsored effort.
Those forensics, can you illuminate for us how you managed to track them back to being sponsored?
Sure. So there are hallmarks within the malware that this group's been developing since 2007 that give us a few of these indications. For instance, the compile times, the marks that show when malware was built, continue to go back to the UTC-4 time zone, the time zone that Moscow and major Russian cities are in. And over 90% of the samples that we've tracked over time align to the working hours, 9 to 5 p.m., when this malware was compiled. We also see the marks of a really well-resourced effort. The malware that's been built shows certain techniques to try to evade detection so that people researching the malware, catching the malware, can't unpack it and understand it as well. These are the types of telltale signs that the people behind this, the developers behind these tools, are really thinking about how to do it. They're resourced. They aren't just buying tools online for $300 and deploying them. This is a state effort that takes years of thought, years of planning, and then the targets themselves say so much about this. The combination of caucus agencies, so agencies in Georgia, defense attachés, ministries of foreign affairs, these are the types of targets that show a state's interest. And with the totality of that evidence, that's what's led us to believe that the Russian government's the likely sponsor of the group.
I have to say, I had no idea hackers kept a 9-to-5 regime. You learn something new every day, Laura. But give us an idea of the work you're doing, the light that you're shining on all of this. Are governments, institutions, bodies listening to you? Is this a game of whack-a-mole, or can actually something be done to tackle the vulnerabilities?
The question right now is, where is the line between acceptable state espionage that's been happening since the beginning of time, right, and aggressive measures that interfere with the internal affairs of a state? So, to put it very boldly, what is sovereignty in cyberspace? And do we consider cyberspace, or do we consider information space? That's the question at hand between Russia and the US right now. Russians and Chinese governments have long considered this broader, more psychological definition of how they consider this domain. While on the US side and other NATO countries, they've thought about this in terms of networks and systems, ones and zeros. So do you take a more expansive view, or do you think of this in terms of a more traditional technology approach? And then what are the implications of choosing either mentality?
And so when we hear from President-elect Donald Trump saying he doesn't think he'll be attacked while he is president in terms of cybersecurity, should we be believing him or pouring cold water over it?
At Fireeye, we've long said it's a matter of when, not if. We've long seen, and the U.S. government's long seen, a variety of different breaches, whether they're on the Department of Defense's networks, whether they're against companies. And what has changed is the type of actors and the type of intrusion. What hasn't changed is the predilection for rival countries and for state-sponsored efforts to go after key government targets in the U.S. I'd be surprised if that changes in 2017.